Let me ask you something personal. Growing up, did your parents own a home? Did they have one job that paid enough to cover the bills, take a vacation once a year, maybe put a little something aside for retirement? Did life feel like it was more or less manageable? Because for millions of Americans, that version of life, the one their parents lived, no longer exists. And the scariest part is not that it disappeared. The scariest part is how quietly it happened. While everyone was distracted, while the news was talking about something else, while people were just trying to get through the week. The American middle class, the backbone of this country, the thing that made the United States the envy of the world for decades, is shrinking, and it has been shrinking for a long time. Back in the 1970s, roughly 61% of American adults lived in middle-income households. Today, that number has dropped to around 50%. That is more than 10 percentage points gone in about 50 years. And where did those people go? Some went up, yes. A portion of that shrinkage represents people who moved into higher income brackets, but a much larger portion moved down, into the lower income tier, into financial fragility, into a life that looks like the middle class on the outside, but feels like survival on the inside. So what exactly is happening here, and why is almost no one talking about it in a way that actually makes sense? Let's break it down. The first thing you need to understand is that the cost of being middle class has gone through the roof, while middle-class income has barely kept up. Think about the four things that used to define a stable, comfortable American life: a home, a college education, healthcare, and retirement savings. Those four things were the pillars of the middle-class promise. Work hard, do the right things, and those four pillars are within reach. Here is what has happened to each of them. Home prices in the United States have increased by over 400% since 1980, adjusted for general inflation. The average home in America now costs around $420,000. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, or Miami, you're looking at far more than that. Meanwhile, median household income has grown, but nowhere near enough to match that pace. A family that could comfortably buy a home in a good neighborhood in 1985 would need to earn significantly more today just to qualify for the same lifestyle. And most families are not earning significantly more, they are earning a little more, chasing prices that moved a lot more. Now let's talk about college. A generation ago, you could work a summer job and cover a significant portion of your tuition. Today, the average cost of a 4-year public university is around $25,000 per year. Private schools can run $55,000 or even $60,000 annually. Total student loan debt in America has crossed $1.7 trillion. That is trillion with a T. Millions of people in their 30s and 40s are still paying off degrees they got in their 20s, while simultaneously trying to save for a house, raise kids, and build some kind of financial cushion. They are doing everything they were told to do, and they are still barely keeping their head above water. Healthcare is its own catastrophe. The United States spends more per person on healthcare than any other developed country in the world, and yet millions of middle-class families are one serious diagnosis away from financial ruin. Medical bankruptcy is a real thing in America. It is actually one of the leading causes of personal bankruptcy in the country. You can be a responsible person, have insurance, do everything right, and still end up with a medical bill that wipes out years of savings. That is not bad luck. That is a broken system landing directly on the shoulders of the middle class. And then there is retirement. The old model, work for a company for 30 years, get a pension, retire comfortably. That model is almost entirely gone. It was replaced by 401ks and individual retirement accounts, which put the responsibility and the risk entirely on the individual worker. The problem is that most middle-class workers are not investment experts. They are nurses and teachers and warehouse managers and accountants. They do not have the time or the knowledge to optimize a retirement portfolio. And because wages have not kept pace with the cost of living, Many of them are not contributing enough to retire comfortably, not because they are irresponsible, but because there simply is not enough left over after paying for everything else. According to surveys, more than half of Americans over 55 have less than $50,000 saved for retirement. Half. Over 55. That is not a personal failure. That is a systemic one. Now here is the part of this conversation that makes people uncomfortable. This did not happen by accident. Policy decisions over the past several decades have consistently favored capital over labor. Tax structures were redesigned to benefit investment income more than wage income. Unions, which once gave workers collective bargaining power to demand fair wages, were systematically weakened. Corporate consolidation reduced competition in industry after industry, which meant fewer jobs, lower wages, and less leverage for the average worker. Financialization, meaning the transformation of the economy into one that rewards financial engineering over actual production, created enormous wealth for people at the top, while squeezing the margins for everyone in the middle. None of this is conspiracy theory. It is economic history. And the result is a country that now has one of the highest levels of wealth inequality in the developed world. The top 1% of Americans own more wealth than the entire bottom 90% combined. Read that again. 1%, more than 90%. That is not a healthy economy. That is a system that has been quietly restructured over decades to concentrate wealth upward. So where does that leave the middle class right now? It leaves them working harder than ever, earning more dollars that buy less and less, paying more for the basics of a stable life, carrying more debt than any previous generation, and feeling, in their gut, that something is deeply wrong, even if they cannot always name exactly what it is. They are not lazy. They are not making bad choices. They are running on a treadmill that is speeding up while the finish line keeps moving further away. And here is what makes it even more frustrating. The political conversation about all of this is almost always framed around individual behavior. Work harder, spend less, make better choices. And yes, personal responsibility matters, of course it does. But when the majority of a country's population is struggling with the same structural issues at the same time, that is not a personal problem. That is a national one. The middle class is not shrinking because people suddenly got worse at budgeting. It is shrinking because the economic terrain changed, and most people were never warned. So what can you actually do about it? The first thing is awareness. You cannot fix something you do not understand. Understanding that you are not failing the system, but that the system is failing you, is not an excuse to give up. It is actually liberating. Because once you see the real picture, you can stop blaming yourself and start making smarter decisions with the options you do have. Build skills that are hard to automate and hard to outsource. Think seriously about investing, even small amounts, consistently over time. Be very intentional about debt, because debt in this environment is the chain that keeps you locked in place. Look at housing not just as a dream, but as a mathematical decision. And stay informed, because the policies that shape your economic life are decided by people you have the power to vote for or against. The middle class built this country. It paid the taxes. It raised the kids. It showed up every day. It deserves better than a slow, quiet erasure while everyone argues about something else. And the first step to stopping that erasure is simply being willing to look at it clearly. This is what's actually happening. And now you know.